Hey, what's up, guys? It's Mixed by 8i, mixed by 8i dot vision. Welcome to another episode of Sesh Mesh. This is a live Twitch stream that we that I set up where we can just talk about all things music. I'm going to show you some of my production tips and techniques. I'm going to teach you everything I know about mixing, mastering. So we'll have a session, and then this is a place where you can also ask questions and I will directly answer them. This is also a place where you get a lot of my insights and thought process that I don't normally record on video. Like, I'm sitting here talking to myself, and my fiance goes, "You should probably uh make a you should probably go live with this." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I should." So this is pretty much a stream of consciousness. There's nothing planned, well, to an extent, but I kind of walk you through how I think as I'm in the moment. So, yeah, here we go. So tonight, as you can see on the title screen, we have some things that you should know as an audio engineer. These are kind of like a collection of things that I've some insight that I gathered over the almost decade of becoming a professional freelance audio engineer. You know, mixing songs for other people. I had to step away from. I had to make the decision to step away from working as an artist to now I have to become business minded and I have to work on other people's music. And I found that I actually really love doing that. But there's a couple of things that I felt that I should talk to aspiring engineers about. And if you're, vetted in the game, you've done a couple of projects. This will probably be more of a refresher course. So as I'm teaching you, this is kind of what I'm telling myself as well. And so, yeah. So I won't take up too much of your time. Tonight is going to be a smaller session. I have prepared for this so I don't go too off the deep end. And without further ado, we're going to talk about things that you should know as an audio engineer. All right. Number one is to trust your ears over your eyes. Okay. Um, what I mean by that is a lot of there's two thought processes. One is the actual mix process, right? We're living in a world where plugins have these stunning visuals and this really nice GUI, and you got EQ where you could see, kind of like the spectrum, you could see your correlation meters, you got the old school VU meters that you could watch. But the overall the overall sense that should take precedence when you're mixing is your ears. Okay, your ears are going to be your indicators that you are mixing in the right direction. Okay, a lot of times our eyes tell us things that our ears probably don't hear or don't want to hear, and it also tells us things that would otherwise be um it would otherwise be um um I shouldn't do this. So trusting your ears over your eyes is what's going to help you stand out. And we have a saying that if it sounds good, it is good. And to piggyback off of what I said, you might see some you might see that you're clipping, but it sounds good when it's clipped. And so naturally, you might say, well, I'm clipping. I might want to pull back on that a little bit. And what you end up doing is affecting the relationship of that sound to in relations to all of the other tracks. And that might, oh, that's not good. You always want to be trusting your ears over your eyes. The second part to this is that we have a lot of people online that will tell you to do this and don't compress this much, don't EQ this much, only notch out this much, only do this much, cut more than you boost. And my thing is, I feel like when you start to put a cap on things like how much EQ to take out or how much compression to use, you really take away the essence of what making music and mixing music is. Back in the days, these engineers, the engineers that we know and love, and highly regard, they weren't those guys. They didn't have all of these visuals. They maybe have VU meters that tell them where they are gain stage and wise. But the overall reason I believe that we love the music from an earlier time period is because, you know, mixing engineers were as were part of the creative process. The technical, thing that we do as engineers is pretty much balance music, but you had those engineers that would push the limits. So I would say if it sounds good, it is good. Don't be afraid to push and boost or cut out as much as you need. Don't be afraid if that compression isn't grabbing. I know a lot of times I do glue compression, and the standard rule of glue compression is don't go more than 4 dB. Well, a lot of times when I'm mixing drums, sometimes I push it past 4 dB just so it can sound a little bit more glued, and I push it until it sounds good, and sometimes I'm getting 12 to 16 dB, and that sounds good to me. uh One thing that I like to do is a trick that Chris Lord Algae does, and that's take a shelf of 8K on an SSL console, but I have the plugin. um Take the 8K shelf on a channel strip and just crank that thing to oblivion, and it sounds good, and you're getting about 12 to 15 dB of added gain, but somehow that vocal just comes out and just it's just really just sitting in your face bright, and it seems to sit on top of the mix. Now you got people that tell you, well, don't boost more than 3 dB. Why? Of course, if I push too much, you know, it can tend to sound bad. But in that same respect, if I don't push enough or if I don't cut enough, it's going to I'm really going to take away the potential of what this sound could be. Or maybe I don't need to touch anything. And that's why I'm like, trust your ears over your eyes. Okay. Number 2, is to be bold and commit. So this kind of piggybacks off of what I said about, making those decisions to really crank things and really cut things. Um and that's to be bold and commit, all right? We live in a time period where, we can make 100,000 takes, 100,000 recordings, and we don't have to be committed to the effects. We don't have to be committed to the process. We can go in and tweak things, and we can go in and change if we don't like something. I think that's a blessing. I also think that that's a curse. I think it opens up room for analysis paralysis. And when you're mixing, my thought process when I'm mixing is to get in, get out. All right. So whatever decisions that I make, I want to be sure that I want to know that these are the decisions that I make. Now that doesn't mean that I don't go back to the mix or I don't go back and tweak settings. But that does mean that I'm not spending hours upon hours doing minor tweaks to things that I've done already in the mix. I think that that's what makes a great mix is boldness and staying committed to a sound. That sound that you chose or that plugin that you chose that for a reason. At least that's what I'm hoping. So you want to be bold. A thing that I like to do to help me kind of like fine tune the practice of being bold and committing is I like to do what's called speed mixing drills. And I have a I have a video on my YouTube channel where I talk about um setting up 10-minute mix sessions and trying to get a finished song within 10 minutes. So a lot of that is leveling, and then when I level, I make decisions and then I move on to the next thing. Why? Because I don't have hours upon hours. I literally have 10 minutes. And sometimes I'm working on sessions as large as like 60, 70 tracks. I do dumb those down nowadays, but my sessions aren't, small these days. So I don't want to spend time and also as an engineer, um, you're pretty much on a timeline, especially when you're working with artists that, you know, forgive me, no disrespect, but you do have those artists that can kind of be pushy and pretty much impatient. So, they're and they don't do it, I believe, to be nasty. It's just so they're so in love with their music. They need to they want to hear it, they want to hear the final thing, and they want to hear it fast. So a lot of your decisions, you know, you have to get out of that. It has to sound right. It's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but we want the artist to appreciate our boldness and how we approach the mix. And what I mean by committing is you know, the older days, you didn't have all these plugins. You recorded the source and you had what you wanted on the source. So you had your EQ, you had your compression, you had pretty much everything you wanted to do on that track, and you had to print it to tape, and there was no going back. Okay? And we do that a lot. We do that to some degree when we're recording. And that's why I say recording technique is, you know, paramount, because a lot of what you do when you record and even mix can't be taken back. And so what I like to do is I like to record into plugins. I like to get the sound right away. I like to record with the compression. I like to record with the EQ so that the mixing process is not as long and tedious when I go to the mix. And also because I'm mixing my own music, I already know this is probably going to be the sound that I want. When you're mixing, a way to commit, especially in Pro Tools, is get the sound that you want, find that auto tune, find that EQ, do your basic mix, and then when you find the right settings for that mix, just commit to it. There's a if you right click your track in Pro Tools, you can commit to your sound and it'll print those tracks in place, and you'll have that processing on there, and guess what? You can't go back. Well, in reality, you can go back, but the idea is to, you know, go for the sound and then just move on. All right? Speaking of move on, we're going to go on to number 3, and that is your first mix is usually, quote unquote, the correct mix. Okay? So the reason I say this is because we're instinctual creatures. All right? Your first mix is your ears telling you honestly about this mix. Your first mix is usually going to be your most exciting one. It's where you're going to make a lot of your decisions. This is going to be your most primal mix. Okay? And so when you when you when you do this first mix, a lot of our issue, especially with beginning aspiring engineers, myself included, we go do a mix and then all of a sudden the mix starts to become otherworldly. Like all of a sudden, the mix is not bright enough, or all of a sudden the drums aren't as loud as we thought it was, or all of a sudden the vocals aren't the vocals are too low. You know, at that point when I start making or questioning myself, do I need to go back and fix this? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? That's pretty much the stopping point for me. That's pretty much when I know, okay, this mix is done, because now I'm going to go back and make all these unnecessary tweaks that don't move the mix forward, don't bring anything out. I'm just basically unbalancing everything. And by the way, there is a way. There is a such thing as unmixing a record. Okay? I've done it numerous of times. But there is a such thing as unmixing a song, and if you're not careful enough, you can definitely do this on accident. So definitely, you want to pay attention, and this is why I do the first listen. The first listen to a song is always going to tell me what I need to correct, what stands out, what is a problem, what seems to be the issue, and this is where you want to write things down, because when you attack those things and only those things, chances are that mix is going to pretty much be done. Okay, if you felt like those vocals at on your first mix, you mix those vocals the way that you heard them, and they were probably right. Okay, plus or minus 1 dB or 2, those vocals were sitting right where you needed them. But when you go on to the mix and you start processing or over processing, you start overthinking. Do I need to do this? Does this work? And a lot of times, like I said, you will unmix your mix. So your first mix is usually, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, always the right mix. That's going to be the one for the bee's knees. All right, check it out. So number 4 is going to be more of a business thing. Offer more than just the final mix. Okay, if you're a freelance mixing engineer, you definitely want to pay attention to this. A lot of times, we as engineers, especially home studio engineers, we like to just send a MP3, sometimes even a waveform of the mix, and you want to offer just a little bit more. My thing is under promise, over deliver. But I do tell people what all they're gonna get, and I do try to provide a little bit more than just the what I tell them. But you know, there's different situations, okay? And you want to be prepared for those situations. So my business model is I offer the MP3 of the final mix. I offer the wave of the final mix. I also offer the clean version MP3. I offer the wave version MP3. And then I get a little bit more into it. I think, well, what if this person wants to perform? So now I send out the instrumental. I send out the mixed instrumental, what I did to it, because a lot of times I get 2 tracks. But I send out the acapellas stems. I send out the effects, because a lot of times if an artist wants to go and have it mastered other than what I did, you know, whoever's doing, or in addition to what I did, whoever's doing the additional mix or whoever's mastering would be able to have control over all of that stuff. So I add a little bit more than just the final mix. And you might be saying, well, that's just a lot of work. Um, charge more, So my price is just enough to where all of these things are pretty much justified, but I'm not overcharging. So, or at least I don't think so. I've gotten quite a few people to pay the price. So I think it's a fair price, but you want to um they call it UPOD. You want to under promise and over deliver. So, what I also do is pretty much not in my job description, but I know the clientele that I work with. I'm usually working with home studio artists who don't generally have a knowledge, or and I don't expect them to, because it's very technical. But a lot of the mixes that I get in, I end up having to edit and tune them. So a lot of mix engineers, they charge for the manual pitch correction, or they charge to use auto tune, or they charge you for a lot of however many tracks you have to mix. And I just think that kind of like muddies up the relationship, because it doesn't allow the artist to be as creative when they start thinking about, well, I got to send you these many tracks so it can be this much. I offer for you to be as creative as possible. Um and we'll worry about that later. I'm at a point in my life where I always, or in my mixed career, where I always, I'm always going to bounce things down anyway. And I have a process. This is what I'm getting to. I have a process that allows me to streamline all of the deliverables that I give you. So I definitely make my job a lot easier by setting up templates and things like that, so that I'm able to offer the final mix. So that's a thing that I want to encourage you to do, is offer more than the final mix. More no, moving on to number 5, excuse me, and that's to use templates. Okay? So I forgot this was coming up, but definitely use templates. And I have a sub note here, is to document your SOP. What is your SOP? That's your standard operating procedures. Okay? So what you want to start doing is using templates. Earlier in my career, I was always like, I don't want to use templates because that feels like cheating. Let me tell you, these days I'm using templates. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not ashamed to say it. I definitely use templates. And that's because, one, my workflow has increased, um, which means I have a lot more, I have more clientele these days, and I have a lot more on my plate as I get older. So I don't want to have to spend time setting up each session. All right. I don't want to have to set up the same reverbs, the same delays if I'm going to use those things. I don't want to have to set up, there's a thing with Waves Tune. That's what I use for manual pitch correction. The Waves Tune, you have to set up this little aux track in Pro Tools. I don't know why. I wish Waves would change that. But you have to set up this little aux track, hide it. And although it's a simple, easy setup, I want, when I go into the mix, I want to be mixing. And so a template just helps me, whether I'm mixing or mastering, it just helps me streamline the process so I can get my mixes done and sent to the clients a lot faster. And when I send it to them a lot faster and they say it sounds good, it makes them happy. It makes them want to come back. So, if you're a freelance engineer, definitely start using templates. If you're mixing for yourself, if you're an artist or a producer mixing for yourself, use templates. What do I mean by documenting your standard operating procedures? Is exactly how it sounds. Make note of your entire process. Okay? That's going to go well with the next topic. Not the next topic. I don't think it's the next topic. But document everything that you do. All right. What happens when you get a mix? What happens when you import the mix? How do you set up your session? How do you start mixing? How do you send the mixes back? You want to start documenting everything that you do, because this is going to help you, not only as a freelance engineer, but if you're looking to you know, establish your career in the industry, you definitely want to have notes of all of your things. And all you want to have all of your affairs in order. Definitely. So, document your standard operating procedures and use templates. If you need a template, I'll tell you how to get one after this video. So, number 6 is going to be, oh, it is, establish your system. So, back to the standard operating procedures. I'm sorry, I thought I had this as number 8. But back to the standard operating procedures. The reason why you want to document it is because you want to now establish a system. You want a repeated step of processes that will help your clients understand that you do things consistently. And also, if you're doing it for yourself, you want to be consistent. Consistency means more money. Well, I shouldn't say that, but consistency means that, you're going to have clients that are happy, and they're going to know they're going to know what to expect every single mix. They're going to know how you're going to establish your sound. Um, and if you're mixing your own music for release, let's say you're working on a project or a complete EP or a complete album, rather, you know, now you're stepping into that realm of consistent sounding music, and it's just going to sound a lot better. Okay. And you're going to do it just just a little bit faster. And so, establishing your system, I pride myself on being a system based human. Everything I do, I try to be methodical and, establish systems around it. A book that I read that helps me and I think would help you is the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. All it simply says is that, you know, our habits form our system, and our system becomes our identity. I might have said that backwards. So your identity is stems from your system, and your system is based on your habits. So with music, what do you do on a daily basis? What do you do every single time that you mix? Okay, now you want to systemize that. You know, especially when what do you do when you get the money from your clients? You want to start systemizing that so that so that it's consistent. I can't tell you how many clients I believe I lost because I didn't have a consistent setup. And after I mix, it's I never hear from them again. So I established a system so that I can, hear from my clients again, but we'll get into that. So next, I want you to understand, we'll go back to mixing, but I want you to understand that as an engineer, less can be more. Okay? We think that as audio engineers that we're doing something, when we start adding processing and adding plugins. Professional engineers, I will say, um, know when to not process. That's the art of mixing, is knowing when to attack and when not to, and when to back up, when to not even touch anything, right? So less can definitely be more. The goal is not to use an extensive amount of plugins. You want to always find ways to simplify your sessions. And that's it. Charmin has the commercial. You know, what's that commercial? Less is more. Uh, with Charmin. I can't remember. But, you know, I don't want to spend time on what can ultimately be an overprocessed mix. And I know you're hearing this going, well, what about the guys that throw on 5, 6 different compressors? Um, and they throw on 5, 6 different saturations and EQs and things like that, and they max out their inserts. Well, that's because they know, one, they know why they're doing it, and two, they're not using much of each plugin that they use. Okay, so they've established their system of working the mix, and their system is to use different compressors or different EQs to create the sound that they want. I can assure you they had the end sound in mind. And that's kind of a side note. Always begin with the end in mind, okay? When you're mixing. Beginning with the end in mind will help you figure out a way to get the mix done in less steps. Okay? So, I tend to not use that approach. I like to maximize and push my plugins past their boundaries. There's a couple of plugins where, I might just use them for sound or the tone that they impart on a sound. So I might not even do anything. There are some plugins that I use as a safety net just to kind of have them there, just to say it's there just in case. But my overall goal is to get a mix done with little to no processing. This is going to also help you. Um, this is also going to help you keep the nature of the mix, or of the original production, because a lot of times you'll have engineers, you'll have artists, or you may have listened to your song numerous times, and now you're going to process it, and it just sounds different. Although it may sound good because you mixed it, you may have your client who has listened to this mix for God knows how long, or you may have listened to your song for God knows how long, and now all of a sudden these minor tweaks you're able to pick up on it, and so at that point you really have to do a lot less because it's all about the client and it's all about your ear at that point, and your ear is used to this sound and they're used to that sound. So you know that all goes into less is more. Moving on, number 8, understand that you're not a mechanic. You're just not. Okay? Um I absolutely loathe. I'll go out on record by saying I absolutely loathe the term fix it in the mix. I think that is the most dismissive and destructive thing that you could ever do for your music. A great mix always comes from what comes before it, and that's always going to be great lyrics, great songs. It has to be a great song, great production. Okay, and that's the vocal production, that's the beat, that's the arrangement, that's the layering of the vocals. I, as a mixing engineer, cannot take your just okay mix, and this is what you have to understand and pretty much tell your clients or yourself. I cannot take a just okay mix and make it this magical thing. Okay, there's things that are involved before I even touch the mix that have to be done. All right? And so I'm not a mechanic. I'm not into the fixing business. So I do what I can with what I have, but I make sure to let my clients know, like, I stress, "Hey, I am going to push you to make great songs. I'm going to push you to make great productions. I'm not just going to sit here and say this song is trash, I don't want to do it, but step into um let's step into a realm. Let's break down what makes a great song." So that's pretty much where I'm at with mixing, and that's because I know, like, if I receive something that's not really great, it's going to just take me just too much time for the output that I'm going to get. And so you have to understand that you have to respect your time as a mixing engineer. And a lot of my frustrations were I would, mix my own songs. I would just say myself, I don't want to throw any clients under the bus, but I would mix my own songs and just be completely frustrated with my music, only to find out later that, yeah, you kind of need great production, you need great vocal technique, you need this stuff. So a lot of that stuff telling you because I've been on the receiving end as an artist. So I have down here that you're a musician. Always remember that you, as a mixing engineer, you're a musician. You just have more technical skills. You have skills that put you above just the average you know, engineer, or you may be learning to grow those skills, but just understand that you're a professional musician at the end of the day. Last but not least is you do need to develop skills outside of mixing. So we call these soft skills. Okay. So your hard skills, or your skills for mixing, is you have to learn how to make decisions naturally. You have to learn how to make decisions. You have to know, you know, you have to know your plugins. You have to know your gear. You have to know, music, and how waveforms work, and what's happening with your when you process something. But there's some skills that you need to develop, and I know that says 9 skills to develop outside of mixing. Now that I see that, it's not 9 skills. I promise you, there's just a couple. Um, the first, I think, the overall skill that you have to learn outside of mixing as an engineer, or even as an artist who's mixing their own songs, is to listen. That's the most important thing. I There's a study that shows that people don't listen effectively. You know, and what I mean by that is we're not listening to actively understand, who we're trying to listen to. We're listening to make our own point. We're listening to say the next thing. And so when you actively listen to your clients, in this case, if you're an artist, if you're actively listening to your fans, um, oh, excuse me. Oh, Lord Jesus. Whew, ear itching. When you actively listen to your fans, oh, that means somebody talking about me. When you actively listen to your fans, you know, you gauge and you start to understand what they truly like. I, in my earlier days as a mixing engineer, would mix a song, right? And I'm just like, this is the best mix I've ever done, right? And then I would send it off to the client, and the client would be like, I don't really like this. And now I'm in my feelings because I'm like, hey, I mixed this. This is creme de la creme. You're not gonna get anything like this. And I would just be like, I don't tell them right away. But instead of getting upset, I learned to say, okay, what's wrong with the mix? Well, I think you should turn this up. I think you should, turn this down a little bit. I used to mix vocals super on top of the beat, and I thought that sounded so good. But I had to learn that not a lot of people like their vocals to sit on directly on top of, like, they don't want it to be loud or louder than the mix. Um and I had to get out of that. You're going to have that client that says, I want, this hi-hat to sound a lot louder than this snare. Turn the hi-hat up, and that turning it up is going to be louder than the snare, but that's how they feel. At the end of the day, it's about the stakeholder. It's about caring for the stakeholder. If you're a freelance engineer, your stakeholder is going to be your client. If you're an artist mixing, or producer mixing your own music, that's going to be your fans and the people you sell beats to. You have to actively listen. The number 2 skill to develop is effective communication. And this is probably where I had to do the most growth, because I'm a shy, reserved person. And a lot of us got into mixing, because, it's, you can do your work. I send my mix. I don't have to really interact with people, or so I thought. So you want to be in communication. Communication is key. And I was telling my fiance earlier that a lot of movies, the conflict, every single conflict is rooted in miscommunication. If the person or the situation, uh, if the person would just communicate that, hey, this is what's going on, or hey, this is what's happening, you know, I think a lot of conflicts in movies would be resolved. Shout out to movie sins. But um but yes, communication is key. And when I learned that I was most of the problem, um, when it came to communication, because it works both ways, trust me. But, I started telling my clients, hey, this is where I'm at with the mix. This is what's happening. I would tell them a deadline, and then that deadline didn't happen, and then I didn't communicate that to them, and now they're like, well, I thought you said it was going to be done by this day. Yeah, I know, but I had some things come up. Well, why didn't you just tell me that? And now they don't want to work with me no more because I don't effectively communicate. So you need to develop your communication skills. If you don't have any, you're probably a great speaker, probably better than I am. Um, a- as you could tell, I stumble over a lot of my words and I ramble. Um, so I'm trying to keep it short and sweet. Nurturing and comfortability. You definitely need to learn the art of nurturing your clients. And what I mean by that is basically, um, you know, a lot of times, your clients or your fans aren't going to buy your music or buy your services right away. So you need to figure out ways to nurture them and kind of like walk them through a journey. You need to walk them through a journey to where, you know, they trust you enough to buy your services or listen to your music. You can't just post that I do mixing or I have an album out. Go check it out. What have you done, to get these people to buy your service? What have you done to get these people to listen to your music? Okay? Everybody's out for their own self-interest. Especially your clients, especially your fans. They're not going to want to listen to you if you don't give them any reason to. Okay? So, you definitely want to be nurturing. And that goes for after the process. So let's say you do get a client and you've started mixing for them. Well, how are you going to ensure that they come back? Through nurturing them. Okay? So I don't also know if you are if you have a live studio. I tend to mix in the comfort of my own home, so I don't, allow people in my studio. But if you do have your own studio, this is just a side note. Make sure everybody feels comfortable. That's going to be your number one job as an engineer. Why? Because when the artists are comfortable, the music just flows, the music becomes better. So make sure you go out of your way to make sure they're comfortable. Get them water, get them snacks, set the room lighting, whatever it is to get them in the zone. Make sure you're making it a comfortable space for them. um Part of the nurturing process of what I was speaking into was going into was the next part of a soft skill you need to develop, more like a hard skill, but this is a skill that doesn't directly correlate to mixing. And that's going to be sales and marketing. Okay? You need to have a keen sense of sales and marketing. And those are going to be two different things. All right? So, marketing is how you nurture. I call it nurturing the tribe. So, marketing is how you're going to nurture the tribe. Okay? So, when I think of marketing, I think of not advertising, but that's a big part of it. I was going to say advertising, but I think of telling a story, walking the customer through a journey, I won't call them a customer, I call them a client. Walking the client through a journey. If you're an artist, walking your fans through a journey. Okay, what does that look like? Um, you can maybe show them of you in the studio. You can maybe give them a shout out. You can maybe provide this triumphant story. I see marketing as storytelling. And as a musician, that's what we do with our music. We tell a story. I use I even use mixing to tell a story. I use different effects. I may use different movements. A lot of processing that I do is to help further the client's story in that song. Help move the story forward. So walk them through a journey. What is it like for them to even know who you are? How are you ensuring that they know who you are? Okay? You can't just say, "Oh, I'm a mixing engineer." Well, everybody's a mixing engineer. What makes you so special? And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to you. It's just that's where I had to be. I thought that, well, maybe if I just say I'm a mixing engineer, you know, I would get a lot of these clients. That build it and it will come mentality is dead. Okay. If you're an artist, you're probably mixing your own music. So you probably don't need anybody like me. Okay. But I want to walk you through a journey and establish a sense of trust. It's a lot of why I'm doing what I'm doing. If I'm laying it all out on the table, it's a lot of why I'm doing what I'm doing because I want to make sure that you know what it takes to become a mixing engineer or what it takes to get your fans to listen to your music, what it takes to get clients, and that's going to be marketing. A lot of what I do is email marketing. I do what do I do? I do email marketing. I just stopped social media. This right here, this Twitch stream is marketing. Um, you know, this is all part of the process. And sales is basically what it is. It's the process, develop your process of, turning these people who are coming to you into paying fans or paying clients. Okay. And that's all that is. So you need to have a keen sense in both. The last thing, the last soft skill that I have that you should probably develop is what you're doing now as an engineer. Knowledge. Okay. You should develop your knowledge, develop your skills so that you can learn how to troubleshoot problems. Okay. Um, if an artist says, well, how do I get my sound to do this? Or how do I do this? You want to have that sense of, I know how to do this, or I know how to get this information. So, as a mix engineer, I'm a student of the game. As I'm teaching you, I'm also learning myself. I spend majority of my time learning about mixing and learning innovative techniques and problems that I can fix because there are a lot of problems when I'm mixing that I still have to go on YouTube to find. So with that said, that is the 9 things that I think that you should know as an audio engineer. So really hope you enjoyed this. This was more of a refresher for me. I definitely appreciate you for stopping by. I appreciate you for watching this on YouTube if you're watching this. And if you're on my Twitch, definitely check out my YouTube channel. It's Mixed by 8i, as you see on the screen. And just for stopping by, check out the website, mixedby8i.vision. I have a free guide on there. You'll also get updates, of course, and things like that. But I have a free guide where I teach you 7 concepts of efficient mixing. So it's a workflow that I created and I set up based off of the mindset of an engineer. A lot of what I teach is not tricks and techniques, but it's about why I do it. Why these things are, why I'm doing these effects. A lot of it is mindset. So definitely check that out. You get that for free, just for stopping by. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link is in the description below. I've been Mixed by 8i from mixedby8i.vision. Thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.